Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking that absolutely explosive March 21st, 2025 announcement of the F-47 Phoenix. I mean, what we're looking at here is a machine that literally promises to redefine the entire future of aerial combat. We're going to go way beyond the basic press releases today to really analyze the extreme engineering and the grand strategy behind this massive aerospace leap. So we have to start with the bombshell political and military claim that just completely ignited the aerospace world. During that March 21st announcement, President Trump pitched this jet as the first true sixth-generation fighter. He described it as, quote, virtually unseeable and the most lethal aircraft ever built. Now, this wasn't just some routine procurement update. No, this was the public unveiling of a closely guarded secret that the U.S. military is essentially banking its entire future on.
Right, so here's our mission briefing for this explainer. We are going to cover 1. The announcement, 2. The Pacific problem, 3. Engineering stealth ++, 4. Human-machine teaming, 5. The $20 billion bet, and finally 6. The final flight. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The F-47 Phoenix announcement. Let's look at exactly how this incredibly shadowy next-generation air dominance project, often called NGAD, finally stepped into the public light. This timeline on screen brilliantly illustrates the sheer, massive scale of this engineering effort, because this definitely didn't just happen overnight. We're talking about over a decade of highly classified, black budget testing that actually began way back in 2014 with DARPA. By 2020, a full-scale demonstrator was already secretly flying around, likely breaking records over the Nevada desert. And all of that culminated in this hyper-aggressive schedule pushing for an operational fleet by the early 2030s.
Section 2. The Pacific problem. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth does the Air Force need a totally new airframe when they already possess the absolute apex predator, the F-22 Raptor? Well, the crucial point here is the vast geography of the Pacific Ocean. See, the F-22 was originally designed for dogfights over Europe, giving it a combat radius of just 590 nautical miles. But in the massive expanse of the Pacific, that shorter range actually becomes a serious liability. The F-47, on the other hand, promises a combat radius of over 1,000 nautical miles. That is a staggering 70% increase that completely changes the geometry of a potential conflict. Think about it this way. If you're flying an F-22 across the Pacific, you absolutely rely on aerial refueling tankers. But those tankers, they're slow, they're giant, and they're incredibly non-stealthy. They're basically flying gas stations practically screaming to be shot down. So by flying further, completely unassisted, the F-47 eliminates the need for these vulnerable targets, and that radically shifts strategic base positioning far, far away from the front lines. Section 3. Engineering stealth ++. Moving over to the physical aircraft itself, we can see exactly how this builds on current technology to achieve what the Air Force literally classifies as stealth ++. The F-47 uses this crazy blended wing body with a diamond-shaped wedge. But notice what's missing here. There are 0 vertical tail fins. Vertical tails are basically giant radar reflectors. So taking off the tail makes the jet incredibly stealthy against both high and low-frequency radars. But there's a catch. It also makes the aircraft so inherently unstable that human reflexes alone couldn't possibly keep it in the air. It relies entirely on ultra-fast, fly-by-wire computers making micro-adjustments 1,000 times a second just to fly straight. And to power this beast, we are talking about a massive, generational leap in propulsion. Competed for by GE and Pratt & Whitney, the adaptive cycle engine is really the engineering magic of the F-47. Traditional engines usually force you to choose. You either get fuel efficiency or you get high thrust. But this engine uses a third airstream to dynamically shift its internal geometry right in mid-flight. The result? You get 30% more range and 20% more thrust from the exact same tank of gas. It's wild. And all that advanced propulsion translates directly into raw speed. The F-47 is expected to hit a top speed of over Mach 2. That's more than 2,400 kilometers per hour. But even more crucially, it's designed to supercruise, meaning it can sustain those supersonic speeds for hundreds of miles without ever even touching the fuel-guzzling afterburners.
Section 4. Human-machine teaming. Now, this is where the concept of air superiority fundamentally changes. The F-47 is an impressive piece of hardware, for sure, but it is not designed to fight alone. Former Top Gun fighter pilot Wiz Buckley enthusiastically pointed out the sheer lethality of this new approach. He noted that the massive leap in AI, sensors, and stealth capabilities means adversaries will be engaged long before they even realize a battle has started. In his words, our enemies won't even know they're dead. The situational awareness generated by this jet is going to be unlike anything in human history.
And this is all executed through what's known as the quarterback strategy. The F-47 pilot isn't just lone wolfing it out there. Instead, they are managing a network of collaborative combat aircraft, or CCAs, like the MQ-28 Ghostbat. These drones push out miles ahead of the manned fighter. They scout, they jam enemy radar, they serve as floating missile trucks, or they even act as sacrificial decoys. And the whole time, the F-47 securely commands the battle space from a very safe distance.
The economics behind this strategy honestly make total sense. An F-47 Phoenix is estimated to cost around $300 million per unit. It is a highly survivable, incredibly expensive mothership. Meanwhile, those CCA drones, they sit at around $25 to $30 million. So by pairing the hyper-expensive asset with relatively cheap disposable drone wingmen, the Air Force hopes to create this overwhelming swarm that simply outclasses adversarial numbers.
But to manage all this, the software has to be as revolutionary as the hardware. Think of the older F-22 kind of like a Nokia 3310. It's indestructible, it's amazing at its core job, but it's closed off and really hard to upgrade. The F-47, it's a modern smartphone. The military learned some hard lessons from the proprietary walled gardens of the past, so the F-47 features an open mission systems architecture. If the Air Force wants to swap out a radar or add a brand new weapon system from a totally different contractor, it's basically plug and play. They do not have to ask Boeing's permission to upgrade their own jet.
Section 5, the $20 billion bet. Okay, now we really must pivot to the reality check here. Building a sci-fi machine of this magnitude involves some staggering economics and intense geopolitics. $20 billion. That is the massive value of the contract awarded to Boeing, and it is hard to overstate how absolutely critical this was for the company. Winning the F-47 was a massive lifeline. It essentially saved Boeing's St. Louis fighter jet production line from completely shutting down, keeping them in the military aviation game for decades to come. But that massive investment comes with a very well-known, very dangerous risk in military procurement. The Air Force wants to buy at least 185 of these jets. But consider the cycle here. If that initial $300 million unit cost causes sticker shock, Congress might step in and cut the order size. Well, a lower production volume means the cost per jet skyrockets even higher, which then leads to more cuts. It's known as the death spiral of unaffordability, and it is the exact same trap that drastically reduced the F-22 fleet back in the day.
And it is vital to note that not everyone is on board with this vision. Commentators and military analysts on networks like CNN have highlighted past cost overruns, looking at things like the F-35 program, and they've voiced heavy skepticism. They're warning of a potential $2 trillion taxpayer boondoggle. They're asking if pouring endless money into ultra-expensive manned fighters actually aligns with future war strategies, or if that funding would just be way better spent entirely on cyber warfare and pure autonomous drones.
However, Washington isn't developing this aircraft in a vacuum. This massive investment is a direct response to a very real global arms race. Intelligence suggests China is rapidly advancing its own sixth-generation aerospace engineering, already testing tailless aircraft like the J-36 and J-50. The U.S. is pushing the F-47 so aggressively precisely because they believe they are in a dead sprint for immediate operational superiority in the skies. Section 6. The final flight. Ultimately, this aircraft represents a profound cultural and operational shift for the Air Force. Human-machine teaming means the role of the traditional fighter pilot is fundamentally changing. The pilot in the F-47 is no longer a dog-fighting maverick yanking the stick and pulling high G-forces. Instead, they are transforming into something much closer to a highly trained systems administrator. Their brain, not their physical reflexes, is the primary weapon in the cockpit. They're managing the battle space and making the final, critical moral decisions for a swarm of lethal robots. Which leaves us with this final, truly fascinating question to take away from this explainer. If the AI drones are doing the scouting, the radar jamming, and the actual shooting, is the F-47 Phoenix the very last manned fighter jet in human history? Will the great-grandchildren of World War II pilots be the final generation to ever physically sit inside the actual weapon they command? It's a really profound thought as we watch this incredible piece of engineering prepare to take to the skies.